Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So taking out a fun and exciting video for you guys today because we're taking a look at Salamander on the Super Nintendo. If you're thinking, but that never came out on the Super Nintendo, you would be correct, but this is Rumbleminze's new port of the NES original to the Super Nintendo. And if that name sounds familiar, Rumbleminze and Infidelity basically trade back and forth with amazing NES to Super Nintendo conversions, and this one definitely is one of my favorites so far. It's going to solve so many of the issues of the original NES game, improving basically everything and giving you a ton of new options, quality of life improvements, and soundtracks as well. Before you get too far involved though, to be a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, you got a Patreon link down below as well. Now just so you know, this is going to work via emulation. It's working on Mr. FPGA as we're testing it here, and it's also been tested on real Super Nintendo hardware with a flash cartridge. So you can basically play this new version of Salamander anywhere you want. And just remember that in the West it was Lifeforce, in the East it was Salamander, and even if I use Lifeforce in the intro bump there, I'm going to call it Salamander for the rest of the video because that is what I know it as. Now right off the top, there's going to be one fundamentally huge improvement on the Super Nintendo version of this game versus the NES version. All of the flicker and all of the slowdown have been removed, so you're going to get a much smoother experience when you actually play Salamander. And even though there is the arcade version of the game, which technically is more impressive, something like this on the NES is absolutely amazing. It is probably where most people started to play the game. The one thing that is completely unchanged though is Salamander's absolutely legendary difficulty. The nice thing is there is a modification in the menu, which I will show you in just a moment, that allows you to go into the game with 99 lives, and even with 99, trying to actually beat this thing is going to be a test because this did not hold your hand. It wanted to absolutely mug you in a back alley and leave you for dead, and it's no different here on the Super Nintendo. But right off the top, the number one change, even if it isn't the one that's most noticeable, the audio is definitely going to be that. It's got to be the removal of the slowdown and the flicker. This is the best version of Salamander you can play on the NES because now it runs on the Super Nintendo, and that's just outstanding because this game would definitely chug and definitely flicker a ton because Konami put some really big sprites for the NES era on the screen, and it definitely suffered for it. Now in the options menu, when you boot up the game, you're going to get a ton of different color palettes. You can kind of articulate the game to look however you want, and that is a lot of fun. You'll see there as well, under lives, you can bump that up all the way to 99. But the best part in my opinion is audio wise, you're going to have all the different soundtracks, X68000, arcade, and more, and it's going to sound just like this. So go ahead and listen. I'll be right back with a ton more. I mean, that's just an awesome soundtrack, and that's just one of many options in Rumbleminze's port right now, and it kind of feels like a special edition release of something like Salamander from the NES, except on Super Nintendo. This is the same caliber of love and attention that somebody like M2 would put into one of their ports of a shmup to a modern console, and it absolutely shows, and that is just so much fun. It basically feels like playing the same game you know, love, and remember for the first time, and just kind of jumping around, changing the color palette, and listening to different soundtracks is a ton of fun in and of itself. And honestly, the grayscale is probably my favorite personally. There's just something fun to be playing in black and white versus the color, but again, there's so many different color palettes you can articulate here. You're basically going to be able to dial in whatever image you want, and that's why I love these NES to Super Nintendo ports. Sometimes in the comments people ask, what is the point of these? You could just play them on the NES, and that's absolutely 100% true. And what I always say is because somebody wanted to and they could is a good enough reason for me to be able to port NES games to Super Nintendo. But in the instance of Salamander and Rumbleminze here, all of the new soundtracks, all of the palettes, the ability to have 99 lives off the menu, just make this an absolutely quintessential version of the game. And then having all of the slowdown removed, that just makes the biggest difference, because usually in a shmup the slowdown can be important to bypass some of the bullet patterns, but that's more in a bullet hell shmup than it is in something like this. So not having that flicker and having those sprites be stable on screen and run at full speed just makes this game that much more fun, and honestly in a lot of ways slightly easier. Now that's not to say that this is going to make the game easy, it's still going to absolutely decimate you every chance you get, but it's going to feel like a slightly more fair fight. And the best part about stuff like this is it doesn't just help games like Salamander or Lifeforce, if you feel like calling it that. Think of every other NES game out there that only exists on the NES that has all of that sprite flicker and that slowdown. When games get converted to the Super Nintendo, people learn knowledge about the hardware and the software and code base, which means that maybe next month or next year you'll see another game, maybe your favorite of all time, moved over to the Super Nintendo, removing all of that flicker and all of that slowdown, because this area right here in the original base game absolutely would just chug a bit, and it had a very strange look to it. And again, I know we can play the arcade original on Mister as well as arcade emulation, and that definitely is an absolutely amazing looking version of the game, but I think as far as conversions from the arcade are concerned, Salamander was probably Konami's best effort on the NES, so having this version is just so much fun. And when I first played Salamander back in the day, it was on an NES, it was not in the arcades. I didn't see an arcade cabinet to it until about 15 years or so ago, so for me, Salamander initially existed as an NES game, and you'll see there all of those gigantic lava bursts have no flicker in them whatsoever, and that does make a difference. Leave me a comment down below and you tell me, if you could snap your fingers and make one NES game be ported over to Super Nintendo, which one would it be? And definitely think of those games out there that can run slow or do have a ton of sprite flicker or could otherwise use fun new soundtracks or improvements. I'm sure I'll hear a lot of different answers, and I always love to hear what you guys are interested in, because it kind of gives me a better inkling of what you might want to see in the future. But this gigantic dragon right here was impressive for the NES, of course for Super Nintendo, no big deal, but seeing this back in the day was wild, and now seeing it running better is even better. But one more soundtrack sample, because again, I can't stress enough how good this music is, and I'll be right back with a lot more. I mean, it obviously goes without saying that's not music that you can get out of the NES or the Super Nintendo at a stock setting. That is definitely a lot of the enhancements that are now available for Super Nintendo, which is another great reason why these ports exist in the first place. You can just basically do anything you want with them with that MSU1 support. You can add in any soundtrack, and you can even rebuild this game, putting any sort of music you want in there. You could have a conversion of Van Halen's Panama just running the entire time, and if anyone wants to make that, I would definitely play it, even if I couldn't play it on the channel. But you'll see here, this scrolling right now is absolutely smooth with no issues whatsoever, and that is another area that just is an improvement, because again, these ports just help the performance, and that is why at the foundational level they do exist. I know a lot of times people get confused why people would want to spend so much time bringing an NES game to the Super Nintendo when you always have the original, but again, Salamander was a game that in my opinion just slowed down a little bit too much, and Konami would always just go with that route as far as NES games are concerned. They wanted bigger sprites and they wanted better visuals on the screen, and I feel like more so than a lot of developers, and they definitely paid the performance penalty for that. This gigantic ribcage here, throwing out all of these different sickle shapes and lasers, just absolutely stunning artwork on something like the Super Nintendo, and that is why that grayscale version, I played around with it in the background, is so fun, because there's something about the blacks to the grays to the whites that just make this game pop and feel a little bit more like a horror aesthetic, because obviously Salamander, not a pure horror game, but it does have a lot of horror imagery, especially this skull right here, and in grayscale it just is fun, even though this rust gold color is as well. And that's why developers like Rumbleminze should be celebrated, because they don't just give you a port with no slowdown and no flicker, they give you so many different color palettes and so many different ways to play the game, and that is just incredible. And because Salamander is both a horizontal and vertical shmup at the same time, it does give you so much creativity in the gameplay style. And if you like those old school hard shmups and for some reason you've never played Salamander or Lifeforce, I can't stress enough, this is a 10 out of 10 game, and now that it's on the Super Nintendo with all these improvements, it's definitely an 11 out of 10 game. But one more soundtrack sample, because I love all of the soundtracks included in this release, and I'll be right back to close out the video. I mean, that's just straight up an awesome track, and it works so well within the context of Salamander. And before you ask down below, because I hear this comment a lot, no, this is not done with AI. This is a developer going in and doing all these conversions by hand. There really aren't any AI tools out there that are going to really speed this process up. Maybe in the future, someone will make a tool set that'll make it easier to convert NES games to the Super Nintendo, but right now, this is basically bespoke, hand-done work by developers who just want to bring you a fun game on a new platform with a ton of quality of life improvements, visual enhancements, and completely different soundtracks. And I, for one, always have a spot on the channel to talk about them. But again, leave me that comment down below and you tell me if you could snap your fingers and make one game come over to Super Nintendo from NES with all of these improvements, which one would it be? Because there's a ton of different fun games, and honestly, I'd love to hear your responses. But we're done. I'm going to try to beat the Pharaoh here, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.